Hey everybody, welcome to the One Wyoming Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Thorburn. You can follow me on Twitter at @by_Ryan Thorburn. Make sure you bookmark the Pokes Insider page at WYO.com to check out all of my coverage of the Pokes. We're kind of doing something different with the podcast, fireside chat style here with Wyoming head football coach Jay Sawvel. Jay, first of all, thanks for joining the podcast. It's finally quiet around here a little bit, kind of the calm before the storm. But you had a great spring, a great winter. Just kind of update us on your mindset now, your first year as Wyoming head football coach.
Well, it is quiet around here right now, and the fact that, our players are gone now. Our upper class players are back on Sunday the 19th. We start summer workouts on Monday the 20th. And so we're excited about that. We come out of the spring. We had an injury or two here or there, but for the most part, we're going to have everybody ready to go May 20th when they're back. And, we'll still look to add a player here over the next couple weeks. And that's kind of at our limit right now with where everything's at. So it's been really good. It's been, you get a little chance to catch your breath for a minute before we head out on this camp circuit and recruiting and everything else while all of our players are back working out.
Yeah, I think since we have this long form opportunity here, I figured we could get the fans to get to know you a little bit more. They know you as the Wyoming DC, now head coach, but you grew up in Ohio, which is a huge football state, and played at Mount Union, which I believe has won 13 national championships now. That run kind of started when you were in college. How did going to Mount Union, which has produced a lot of coaches, obviously a lot of wins, kind of shape your career and getting into football?
Yeah, that was a huge influence for me in a lot of ways. Number one was the fact that, I think when you go to a Division III school, and you're part of your family and you are paying to go to school, you learn the value of your education. And I tell players that all the time, is the fact that, like, if you're on scholarship, value your education and do that, because if you don't do it, why should I, in that regard. So I think that's a big deal to start with. So that was formulated at that time. The second thing is when I got there, you're playing in a program that had 200 players at the time. And so there's a resilience and a determination that goes through that every day you'd better practice well, every day you better fight, for your next piece of food. And so you stick with it. You had to pay some dues. You had to do that type of thing. And I was on their first national championship team. And so I think the thing that, that I use with players that we recruit here right now, right, is that, Wyoming hasn't won a Mountain West Conference championship. And the first team that does that, they're going to be legendary, right? And, I was on a first national championship team at a place that's won 13. And this is, I think it's great they've won 13, but when you're 7, 8, 9, and 10, people don't have as much attraction to that as what it was when it's number one. And this is part of it. And so I tell you what, there was one thing that I learned in that. I thought it was one of the best things I was ever a part of. We were 2 years into my time there, and we had a team meeting following a season and redefined our goals. And the goal became not to be a conference champion, to be a national champion. And at that point forward, we never talked about the word champion. We just talked about what we do one day at a time. So when everybody hears me talk about one day at a time, when DJ Jones slips up in his media session after the spring game and says the word championship and then caught himself, there's a reason. You learn all those things back in your day.
Yeah, and you were a graduate assistant at two different places, Eastern Kentucky and Notre Dame. One is another small school, another is the ultimate college football program in college football history. What did you learn at those two places?
So at Eastern Kentucky, I worked for Roy Kidd, who I think was one of the He's one of the best people I've ever come across. And he just passed away this past fall. But when I was working at Eastern Kentucky, you walk outside and the stadium was Roy Kidd Stadium while he's still the head coach. So I don't know how many times that you'll ever get to a point where you are working for someone who has a stadium named after him while they're still coaching. And that was just the respect that he had from everyone in the coaching community. And it was just great because, you know, it was my first time in a coaching side of things, first time being around things in depth. But also to see someone who was uber competitive like Roy Kidd was, but was one of the nicest people that you could ever meet, and that you could do both. And I think that that's an important thing to always be aware of. Because of Coach Kidd, I got that opportunity at Notre Dame. And it was funny because, you know, they had an opening and was trying to get some different ways to it. And I was in his office, and he just picks up his phone and calls Lou Holtz. And his secretary asked who was calling. He said, Roy Kidd. And she said, comes back to the phone and said, he'll be with you in just a minute. He could get a call like that from anybody. And it's interesting, you know, like the two places that I had opportunities out of Eastern Kentucky to go to was Notre Dame and Alabama. And, you know, it's how that all works out. Couldn't have been more blessed. The Notre Dame experience was great. Got to work with some great coaches. Obviously see things on a scale that is, you know, magnified to the nth degree. Worked for Lou Holtz's last year at Notre Dame. It was interesting. It was really good.
I really enjoyed a lot of your post-practice talks this spring. You know, you have a message. It's a chance to talk to the whole team, get a message across every day. Lou Holtz obviously was tremendous in media circles with his personality and stuff. What was he like, you know, in terms of with the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the team, I mean, obviously there was a really good message, you know, day in, day out. I think, you know, one of the things that he did on a daily basis was be very intentional about what he was going to talk to the team about. And I think that's something that I learned at that time, that, okay, you know, not every practice that needs to be something where you're having a discussion with the team or you're talking to the team or whatever. But on the days that you are, what's the point that you want to get across? And what's the point that we're trying to nail home on that? And I think that's really important. And he was a master at that in a lot of different ways. Some unique, very unique, some very straightforward. And I think anybody who worked there in that era could probably write a book, you know, about like what really happened behind the scenes and everything. It was really interesting. But I was blessed to have that opportunity.
So you went on to Ferris State, I believe, Southern Illinois, Northern Illinois, Minnesota. How did you get connected with Jerry Kill, and what kind of impact did that have on you?
So at the time I got connected with Jerry Kill at Southern Illinois, I think it was because I was one of the few people that was actually going to take the job. You know, I was an assistant at Ferris State, making $22,000. And at that point I was 27 years old, I think. And, you know, okay, that Southern Illinois has a job open. They want to interview me, the whole deal, and go through that. And, you know, you feel like, okay, you're going to step up a level, you're going to do that and the whole deal. And they offer me $21,000 for the job. And it's like, you're going to step up or you're going to lose $1,000 in the process. But I took it. It was a situation where it was, you know, you had to, you know, take that, you know, you take a leap, right? And it wasn't, you know, and Southern Illinois at the time was kind of, it was down, you know, I mean, it was really down. You know, we never showed players our stadium or our weight room on official visits. The weight room floor was maroon that faded so bad that it was pink, and the stadium should have been condemned. And so we never showed them those two things on visits. And so, but you know, Jerry Kill had worked for Dennis Franchione and the whole thing. And, and so part of that tree was rebuilding programs, and part of that tree was a process of what to do when things have not worked and then how to restart things. And he was really, really good at that. I don't have that situation here, because of what I am able to take over, but there's a lot of foundational things that you learn through 15 years working for somebody that stays.
Yeah. I mean, your profession's very hard in the sense that, you were at Minnesota, you're at Wake Forest. Sometimes staffs get let go in football if you're not, winning at the clip that everyone wants, your AD or your fan base or whatever. So between Wake Forest and Wyoming, did you have to do any soul searching? And when Craig Bohl called you, what was that moment like? And it's probably exceeded your wildest expectations of what it would lead to.
Yeah, I think what happens, I'm a kind of a case study that in life, you kind of just keep fighting, because you could be in a really good spot and then it goes bad, and then you dig yourself back out again and you get back to a really good spot. We had a 9-win season at Minnesota in 2016. We had an athletic director that wanted a new head coach after a 9-win season. Okay, we had a top 25 defense, and we just had beat Washington State in a bowl game and held them to 12 points and the whole deal. And so, all of a sudden you're a free agent in a sense. And, I had different opportunities and the whole deal. And it took one that didn't have the best fit. It had the better title and the better money. Wrong reason to take jobs. It was, take it for the fit, take it for the people. Wasn't very long till you realize, okay, this wasn't the fit that I was looking for and needed. And so in that in-between time, when I was done at Wake Forest, before I came to Wyoming, there were things that I looked at personally, that I wanted to improve. There were things I looked at professionally that I wanted to improve at. And then, I was in a position where I was about to go into a divorce situation and the whole thing's that way. So, there was just a lot of time there where you go, okay, here's the deal. When I come through this and I come out on the other side, this is how much better I'm going to be when I do that. And that was everything from, going to the University of Iowa, about certain things, going to Iowa State about certain things, going to Nebraska at the time, going to Wisconsin. I'm friends with Jim Leonard, who's now the DB coach with the Broncos. I'm friends with John Haycock, who's the defensive coordinator at Iowa State. When we went to this 3-man front stuff this past fall, these were things that I learned at Iowa State in 2019, and so all that, leads to certain ways. And then when Craig Bohl called, so what happened was, when this job came open, within an hour of it coming open, Bart Miller had called me. Bart was the offensive line coach here at the time. Said, hey, would you be interested in this? Yeah, I'd be interested. And he'd come out here and have an interview with Craig Bohl. And the thing I appreciated about Coach Bohl was maybe an hour of it was on a board talking football, and the rest of it was like talking life. And there's so many things that I appreciate Coach Bohl for, because there's parallels that he had in his life that I had. And, and so I could see that. And so that's why it was such a great opportunity.
Yeah, one thing I loved about your press conference, I mean, I have 3 daughters, so it hit home with me, and I've moved around to the West Coast and back to Wyoming and all this stuff, avoiding the grim reaper of the newspaper business as best I could. But you said you okayed it with your daughters who were living in Minneapolis at the time. Like, is it okay if I take this job and move to Laramie, Wyoming, you guys going to be good for a little bit?
Yeah, and so that was, so I came and interviewed, got the job offered to me, and it was in the morning, and I was calling Coach back that evening, and I told him, yeah, I really want this. I want to talk to my daughters. Go ahead, do that. He was great. I talked to both of them that night. I knew that my youngest would be, Miranda it would be real easy. And she was like, well, that's what you are. You need to go do it. I worried a little bit about Mackenzie in the fact that, like, I think when I was first gone from her before, that it was harder on her. And so when I talked to her, I mean, that's what she was just like, Dad, I'm good. And, so I had that. And it was one of those things that's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this right. I'm going to do this really well for you two. Yeah. And that's kind of where that came from.
And now Mackenzie's here out in Wyoming. That's got to be fun.
Yeah, it's good. I get to see her often. Sometimes, I mean, it's really good. I couldn't be more happy with how that's turned out, and the fact that her choosing to go to school here was something that I had to be kind of the neutral parent a little bit, in the fact of, like, I'm not talking you into this, but if you're here, that's going to be really good.
Yeah.
And when I got this, the job offered to me, they were the first two that I texted, as soon as I walked out of Tom Berman's office. And she sent me a text that was like, so that means you're going to be here my whole time. Yeah, I'll be here your whole time. So we're pretty close, so it's good.
Of course, your first year at Wyoming was 2020, which was the pandemic. I was covering Oregon at the time in the Pac-12 season. I mean, you really can't even count it. It was such a mess. But 21, you guys, win a bowl game. The portal comes into play. You guys have to kind of adjust to the life of this era we're in right now. 22, young team, did really well. And then last year, 9 wins. What was it like spending, the last, part of Craig Bull's tenure in college football with him and getting it to a place where you take over a stable situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think after the 21 season, when we had, kind of the number of people that went into the portal at that time, it was kind of new. The portal was like just becoming like a big thing. And the number of people that went in it and everything else, it hit him hard. It did. It was something that made him, like, I mean, because we had a good culture. We provided so many things for our players. Our program runs the same as really what a Big 12 school does on a day-to-day basis, from what our players get and the way that everything operates. And he's the one that had pushed it that way, because he had been in Nebraska. He knew what places, big-time places, operated like, and he wanted Wyoming to operate that way, and it did. And then so for that to happen, and what happened was, beyond that, I thought in 2022 and 2023 that, in my opinion, Craig Bull enjoyed coaching more than I saw at any point in time working for him. And, you could sense him have, he had good relationships with players. He just took every day and he enjoyed it. And, so for this past year, it's interesting, because when it was all said and done, you could go back and maybe connect dots that he knew that he was going to retire at the end of the season. In the moment, we didn't know that. But I think if you connect dots, there was even a staff meeting that went back to the point when we were 5-1 after we beat Fresno State, that he made a comment. And if you go back to it now, it's like, yep, like he knew, what his plan was and what his hopes were. And so, I loved working for Craig Bull, and I loved seeing him. I saw him a couple weeks ago, and he's a great guy. And the first thing he said to me is about putting names on jerseys. So had to laugh about it.
Well, that's an interesting point, because, you're doing that kind of stuff, and, more of this media type stuff we're making you do and all that in this era, but you're going to keep a lot of Craig Bull's tenets to his program in place, the recruiting footprint, Wyoming walk-ons, all that sort of thing. Just what are the strengths of the program that you really, noticed during your time with him that you have to keep in place?
Well, the foundation of the program was always cowboy tough, and that's first and foremost. Like I come off the field every day, and that's the first thing were we tough enough today? Like that's the first thing that I'm always constantly thinking about. I think the second part of it is that the embracing of a developmental program, and that was, Coach Bowl from his time at Nebraska as an assistant, his time at North Dakota State as a head coach, his time at Wyoming as a head coach, was about developing players. We're a double rep team. Everybody's going to get repped during you come to our practice, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So foundationally, I thought that there were so many things that worked for this university and this program that it would be foolish to change them. And so they'll never change. And I think that's who we are. We're gonna grind. We're gonna be tough. We're gonna fight. And that's all that stuff foundationally stays in place. Is there some things in 2024 that maybe you got to do a little bit different, media-wise or social media-wise, and some things like that? Potentially. But does that really win games or not? I don't know. But, you always have an eye toward recruiting. You always have an eye toward things that, Coach Bowl gave me great advice, too, when I got this job and in different phases to it. And one of them is, if it helps you win, do it. If it doesn't help you win, don't focus on it. And, that's really been largely a big thing for me is like, we've done, we put names on jerseys. That doesn't really help us win. Okay, it helps player engagement. Well, player engagement helps wins too a little bit. But in the end, I didn't put a lot of focus on that. I put focus on other things, like how we're working out, how we're practicing, how much time we're on the field, those types of things.
I think the timeline was, you guys went to Nevada for the regular season finale, blasted them, and then sometime after that, Craig let you guys know that this was going to be his last hurrah. What was that like to get the chance to sit down with Tom Berman and to sell your vision for the program and to succeed Craig Bowl?
Yeah, so we came back from the Nevada game late that Saturday night, and we were going to have a noon staff meeting on Sunday. And that's not unnatural to have a staff meeting at the end of the season before people, but we couldn't go recruiting on Monday anyway. So to have the Sunday staff meeting, we had that meeting, and Coach told us that that was his last game, and his hope was that they would consider someone within the program and the whole deal. And it wasn't long after that I got a call that said, hey, they'll want to talk to me. Great. It was that Monday. Then I had a long conversation with Tom Berman on the phone, and I think he just wanted to make sure I wasn't a radical, that we're going to start having slogans and sayings and all kinds of stuff all over the building and those types of things. And then from there, it was, I learned I would have an interview, that following Monday, learned that on, I think Thursday or Friday that week. So you're just getting your thoughts together. You're getting everything together that you need to have presentation wise, because, like you're presenting, like, it's like the ultimate presentation, right? Like you're presenting a vision for a program. You're presenting a vision for a university, presenting a vision for something that is a pride of the state. And so you don't take that lightly. And, so I think so much of what is already in place, we just needed to continue to build on and try to take it in another couple of notches.
What did it mean to you personally? Because, let's face it, in this era, if there's a coaching change, half of teams get in the portal just to check it out, you know what I mean? And you really had incredible retention with this roster, and the players obviously give you the credit for that. They want to play for you. What does that mean to you?
That means the world to me. I think, I when I came back, I set out the 2019 season. I got back in 2020 here at Wyoming. And, of course, then it's the COVID year and the whole deal. But I told myself then that I'm going to enjoy every day of coaching for what it really is. And that is helping develop people and helping them develop a career and being engaged with people in a way that you want to see them succeed and you want them to grow personally. And so from that point, really, I had great relationships with all players in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. And then to get the head coaching job and to have everybody back, and I spent so much time with defensive players and then to have the relationships that I have with Fia and Harrison Whaley and John Mike and Evan Sabota and Jalen Sargent, and just you go down through the list of guys that I spend a lot of time with now. It's really rewarding, and I value that as much as anything.
Of course, two big moves. I mean, a lot of big moves this offseason, but Jay Johnson, offensive coordinator, you met him at Minnesota, coached with him. He's been the OC at some Power 5 programs. He's some very balanced offenses, some very prolific offenses. A couple years ago at Michigan State, they were really as balanced as you can possibly get.
Yep.
And then obviously promoting Aaron Bull to DC, your old position, that seems pretty smooth as you can get.
Yep.
What did you see from the coordinators during spring, to carry that momentum into the summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, with Aaron, that was an easy transition. I thought he was ready. I knew he was ready from when I got here in 2020, and to where we were at the end of my fourth year in terms of game plan suggestions, and then, maybe even more like in-game on a headset, there's a timeout, there's 3 minutes to go in the game, or there's you get to a last series, how we're going to operate this series and the whole deal. There would be conversation with other coaches, and he was the one that had the most conversation. And I think in that, there was also a lot of things that he would say that'd be like, that's a really good idea. And so, he's really well thought out. He studies it relentlessly. And so that was, I thought, an easy transition. And I think for the players, there's continuity in how we're coaching defensively, what we're running defensively, and that, that was really important to me to continue that. For Jay Johnson, number one, I knew the quality of person that we were going to hire, because I worked with him for a year, and I knew how seamlessly he fit with our staff when I was at Minnesota, in that year. And we had a 9-win season at Minnesota. That's not something that they have a lot of, is 9-win seasons at Minnesota. And, but I think his commitment to improving quarterback fundamentals and his knowledge of quarterback fundamentals was a big thing that drew me to him. And then his commitment to overall offensive balance. And in the spring, I think that the one thing that our players appreciated was just there was a conciseness, and there was an organization, and there was everything was mapped out to such a detail. And they saw that in even kind of the side small workings that we're able to have in winter conditioning, when we can have 15, 20 minutes with them on the field, like, of how that worked. And, so they got a pretty good idea of his operating style. And, no, I'm really happy with the two coordinators for sure.
I think what stood out on the defensive side to me is it looks like you guys are going to have a really good pass rush. Top 5 defensive ends are back from last year's rotation. You're going to throw Jordan Bertinoli, a 6th-year senior, in the middle there. He sat out the spring, but he's back. And the experience at linebacker with Shea, and then, Wyatt and Isaac at safety up the middle. You're so experienced. Maybe Tyrekus Davis had the best spring of anyone at corner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not perfect. You're going to play some super talented defensive tackles that are young. You're going to have to play some young corners, but this defense Do you think it could be a special unit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a really good unit in the fact that I think there's a couple things. Number one, we finished the year playing really well between Hawaii, Nevada, Toledo, right? In those 3 games, we finished playing well. We played well against Colorado State. We played well against, Fresno and throughout the year in home games. We had 2 away games we didn't play as well in, and there's things that we have to improve at. I think we've got a group with experience that's got proven productivity that also knows we can be steps better. And so I think that's the part that I'm excited about, is the fact that we can look at it and point to something and go, hey, we've got to get better in these areas to really get to where we need to get to. And I think we're healthier at a couple positions, especially the defensive ends, than what we were a year ago. I think that's a critical thing. We need to maintain that through camp when we get to August. And no, but it's an exciting group, and I think there's a hunger there to them to play a certain way and to be as good a defense as what we can be.
Then offensively, I mean, obviously Andrew Peasley was a gamer. He's going to be a legendary Cowboy, I think, as time goes on and people realize how tough he was in the Texas Tech game and some of the games he had. But I think everyone's really excited about Evan Svoboda. He's, wears number 17 in terms of filling out that uniform away. A different guy filled it out. J. Mike is also a special talent at tight end. You get 4 starters back on the offensive line, and I know Jay Johnson gets everyone excited because you're spreading it out more. There's tempo, but you still have a stable of running backs to pound like Craig Bull loved to pound. Yep. So the balance there, do you see that as a trending in the right direction? Yeah,
I do. And to get back to the first thing you talked about, Andrew Peasley, I thought with us winning 9 games last year, and I made a comment that kind of took a little life of its own, I think, at the end of spring practice, but I was sincere about it, is I thought Andrew Peasley, unlike maybe other players or quarterbacks before him when I was here, Andrew Peasley didn't play at Wyoming. He played for Wyoming. And I thought he had a passion for playing in this program. And I think maybe there was an appreciation for the fact that he got cast out of one program, essentially, because they kept bringing in a guy and bringing in this. And he came here and he took ownership of it. And I think he taught everybody a really good lesson about what that means. And so it was a big shout out to him, and I'm happy that he's signed with the Jets and wish him all the luck in the world. With Evan Svoboda, it's real easy to sit there sometimes and smile and look at it and go, okay, this guy could be really, really good. And I loved the way he finished the spring. He had some days in there in the last 6 practices that were outstanding. And I thought our receiver group made strides through the spring as well. And like you said with J. Mike, I think he's going to be a weapon. He was an underutilized weapon a year ago, and that's not going to be the case. He's going to be a really well-utilized weapon. And then the running back group, Harrison Whaley is healthy and really feels good about where he's at right now. And then with what we've brought in with DJ Jones, but then also Jamari Farrell had a great spring. Sam Scott's talented, and you still have DeWine McNeely coming off his injury. So there's a lot of reason for optimism on it. We've got some development to do in the O-line, we've got 4 starters back, but it's getting to where we're comfortable with 9 guys, in that whole group. And so there's some growth and maturity and coaching that we still have to do. And, it's like anything, right? You're never going to have it all at one point in time, at the same time. But we got to keep pushing because we want it all. And so that's a big part.
Yeah, of course, the missing piece on the O-line, Frank Crum, now with the Denver Broncos. Ayira Sante's getting a chance with the Giants.
Tried to find all these guys extra years of eligibility,
Trayton Welch with the Browns. I mean, there are some key players to replace, but there seems like there's more depth, more skill on the offense right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the comment was made, by multiple of our coaches that they thought that where our receivers finished the spring, that this was maybe as depth-wise, maybe the best receiver room that they've seen for a few years here. And, I think that's big deal. I mean, Justin Stevenson came along. We brought in TK King. You've got guys that have improved. Jalen Sargent popped this spring, which was important for us. And then you have, you bring in a guy like Chris Durr, who's kind of electric and all that that there is reason for optimism in it. And, look, we can't get where we want to get to unless we find a way to have balance. Look, I'm a defensive coach, and I've been a defensive coach my whole life. I know for us to be able to get what we want, there's going to come a time we got to win a game 34-31, right? And there's going to come a time that we're going to have to win a game throwing the ball for 300 yards. When we don't always want to do that, we want to run it and the whole deal, but maybe the run game isn't a thing that day. But then there's another day where we're going to have to be able to run it for, a lot. And it's just, you have to be able to win multiple ways. If you only have one way of winning, then you're at the whim of a lot of different, outside factors.
And of course, you can win 16-15 when you have John Hoyland. I know if he's a Groza Award winner or finalist, you can be like Craig Bowl and say, I coached the Kickers this year.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever say I coached the Kickers. I talked to John quite a bit, and so I direct the Kickers at certain things, and that's about all we're going to do. John's outstanding. I think he hit a spot for him during last year that maybe he felt like he wasn't performing the way that he could or needed to. But, I think John, had a really good spring. Really is, continuing to develop. And I think that's a big part of it, and has a good plan even for the summer within his development. And so he and I just met the other day about, what we're going to do in fall camp and all these things. And there's going to be a continued path on that. It's like a sports car, right? Like you got to keep it in fine tune. And I want to make sure that he's in fine tune because he's really good.
Well, before I get you out of here, I think fans are probably like, it's so far away till the Arizona State game. But I know for the Restore the War guys putting the stadium together, and for you guys getting ready for the season, it's going to fly by. Just what's it like, having the schedule, having the War restored? We know what it was like last year, 7-0, just great crowds, record attendance. But you have road games at Arizona State and Washington State, very interesting road games. They would have been considered Power 5. I don't know what it's considered these days, but and home games obviously against Idaho with the new stadium, and then BYU. I think players are going to be surprised at what the fans are like during that game and what that rivalry is all about. Yep. Dating back to the 60s. And then two of the probably favorites in the Mountain West, Air Force and Boise State, as they are almost every year, have to come to the War. It's quite a schedule.
Yeah, it's a big schedule. I mean, we realize that, and realize the fact that, the Arizona State team that will play going into the Big 12, resources that they have, they'll have a lot of new players. They've got quite a few good players that are back. That's going to present a big challenge right out of the gate. And then, having, a FCS playoff team come in, and then having an old rival come in here is a big deal. And then, that the North Texas game will be a difficult road game against a team that, scores points and does things. And so, that part of it's a major challenge, and we really just focus on ourselves, though, in the time being. And I think, we're optimistic for a lot of reasons. We're excited for a lot of reasons. But, when we have a team meeting this Sunday, the biggest thing we're going to talk about is let's get back to work and let's handle one day at a time, and let's handle being the best that we can be in the meantime to it. But there's a lot of reasons to be excited, for fans and everything else. And I think we've got the best fan base in this conference. It's the best game atmosphere. I know Boise has a little bit bigger stadium and everything that way, but they used to have a track around it, and their people were further back, and you feel the people in War Memorial like they're right on top of you, and I love that. I think it's awesome, and our fans are tremendous. They're a big part of why we were 7-0 at home last year, and so we're excited for what comes next, and but before we get to what comes next, we've got a lot of work to do in the meantime, and that's my job to make sure that we're grinding away on that work.
All right, Jay. Well, enjoy your summer. Enjoy being a 0-0, because that's always the fun part, and then you'll get into the real stress this fall. But thanks for joining the One Wyoming podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Make sure you subscribe at Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts.